Okay. So we're going to jump right in. Thank you for joining us for the Creative Healing for Youth in Pain or CHIPS webinar, Mind Body Medicine for Chronic Pain and Anxiety. My name is Samantha Levy. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work with youth with chronic pain and other medical ailments and their families. I run the CHIP groups for parents and I see the youth and their families in my private practice. I also contribute to the CHIP parenting blogs that are on the CHIP website, and I've been a speaker on 2 of the webinars in the CHIP series. For those of you new to our community, CHIP is an online nonprofit organization that empowers youth living with chronic pain to heal by altering the brain's pain circuits through exposure to creative healing experiences, educational resources, and support. I am delighted to introduce Nicole Sachs, a psychotherapist, leading mind body clinician, host of the Cure for Chronic Pain podcast, and author of the upcoming book, Mind Your Body, which you can now pre order. Nicole was diagnosed with a degenerative spinal condition and faced a future of debilitating pain. After discovering Dr. John Sarno's work in her mid-20s, she reclaimed her life through mind-body medicine. She transitioned from Sarno's patient to his colleague, lecturing with him at NYU, supporting his patients through her private psychotherapy practice, and continuing his work. She also has a healing online program for chronic pain, which has 14 lessons with videos, writing prompts, readings, and tools to use. You can access that program and all of her information through NicoleSachs.com, and it's NicoleSachs.com, and I'll put that in the chat also. Before we begin, I would like to review a few housekeeping items. First, please enter your questions in the Q&A section through the webinar. I will incorporate audience questions in today's conversation. The chat is open for discussion, but we cannot guarantee it will be included in the conversation with our speaker and moderator. Second, our webinar is being recorded. Previous CHIP webinars are available on CHIP's YouTube channel. A link to our YouTube webinar playlist will be in the chat. Finally, I'm asking you to consider donating $25 to CHIP if you find our monthly webinars valuable. Now we are ready to begin. Thank you for joining us today, Nicole.
Thrilled to be here.
Great. I'm looking forward to this. So, to start us out, can you define mind body medicine and talk about the brain science behind the reasons we experience chronic pain and other symptoms?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll start just really briefly, just because you mentioned it in my bio. I just want to say to anyone listening, a parent, a young person, I am you. Meaning, I want to start by qualifying that at 19, I was given a prognosis that was very grim because I have a condition on MRI and X-ray called degenerative spondylolisthesis, which originally when my back went out completely, when I was a freshman in college, of course you see a finding like that on MRI and you would naturally draw the conclusion that that was the reason for my pain. And so we went, full force into the physical therapy and taking steroids and taking muscle relaxers and really truly treating my pain as it was only necessary to look at the part of my body that was expressing the pain. And that was, a very reasonable thing, both for my parents as mom and dad, and for me as a person experiencing the pain. But as I moved through my life and got, my degrees, undergraduate and graduate, and I was starting to be in the world, I was in chronic pain. The acute pain was able to morph into chronic pain because I used those modalities, steroids, and if you do enough to your body, you can move away from being completely acutely unwell. But chronically, I was in a lot of back pain and also emotionally, like I was like, my life is going to be limited at the time. This was now granted, this was in the early 90s, but I was told that, no more exercise, no more travel, no more riding in the car for more than an hour because of the bouncing motion, very specific sleeping positions to not destabilize my back. And the kicker was that it would be unlikely that I would have a biological child because the weight of the baby would really be a dangerous situation to put me in these acute pain incidents. And so, at age 19, that's a pretty heavy thing to be told. And the reason I'm starting with this, even before I go into defining mind body medicine, which is like so important to me that you guys get, is that when I understood through my exposure to Dr. John Sarno, who is like the grandfather of mind body medicine, he practiced for over 50 years at NYU School of Medicine, and I ended up through my career lecturing with him and teaching with him there, that we live in a mind body system. This is something you already believe. If I lecture to a room of 1,000 people and I say, raise your hand if you've ever had a stressful day and gotten a headache, every hand in the room will go up. Almost no one will say that they've gone through a lifetime and not been super, super stressed out, overwrought, overwhelmed, and had like a headache at the end of the day. Oh my God, I have to lie down, take some Advil, go to bed. Everybody knows that bad news, hard times, stress, and overwhelm can cause stomach stuff, lack of appetite, digestion problems. People have always heard the story of the comedian who's about to go on stage and they run to the bathroom and throw up. No one thinks that they just got the stomach virus. Everyone knows they were really nervous and they went and got sick. So, what I'm trying to say is mind body medicine is not trying to teach you something bizarre and new. It's saying we all believe that emotional stimuli, stress, nerves, overwhelm, anxiety cause physical reactions in the body, stomach stuff, head stuff, hives, right? People are in a panic and they break out into hives. We all accept this. But when anything becomes chronic, all of our understanding of that mind body connection goes out the window. And I have to say, actually, because I think it's a funny example, especially when I'm speaking to young people, the most basic mind body connection that we all accept from the moment we're born is when we're really sad or scared or moved, what happens? Water falls out of our face. Okay. So it's like emotional stimuli causing the most physical reaction in the world, crying. We know we are connected. So, anyway, I started to understand this. I started to see Dr. Sarno's transformative, groundbreaking work. He had, at the time, I think 4 or 5 best-selling books, but it was still very niche. Like, people didn't, first of all, not a lot of people knew about it, but also people who did know about it were making the erroneous connection that he was saying the pain is in your head, that he was saying somehow this isn't real because we're asking you to consider the mind-body connection. So, one of my greatest goals in my career and in my books and everything I do is to really immediately dispel that. The pain is not in your head. You are not hysterical. You are not overly sensitive. You are not making it up, and you are not at fault. There is brain science behind why we feel anything. I like to make a joke with people when I'm lecturing or teaching that if we cut off your head, you're not going to feel your pain. Your brain and your nervous system are necessary for anything you feel. In addition, not only can the brain send pain signals, which we'll talk about why, the brain can remove pain signals, meaning if you were being pursued by a predator and you felt that your life was in danger, you were certain you're running from something. If you were to turn your ankle and break your ankle in the process of running from that predator, you would not feel pain until you became perceptively safe. So if you got into a place, closed and locked the door, sat for a second and realized, okay, I'm not in immediate danger, your ankle would explode in pain. Why? Because adaptively for your survival, the pain would not have helped you while you were trying to run from the predator. However, once you're safe, you need the pain because you need to know that you have to take care of yourself. You have to pay attention to the part of the body that is hurting because if you don't, if we look back into like early evolution, you'll die. If you have a cut and it doesn't hurt you, before we had all this modern medicine, you're going to become septic and die if you don't clean it properly and take care of it. So human beings have evolved through all these years because we are brilliant. Our brain, our nervous system, our body are in a dance all the time that is perfection. The problem is 21st century society, and for a while it has been, is an onslaught of constant predators. We are under pressure. We are under horrible self-criticism. We are our own worst critics, perfectionistic, people-pleasing. We have the demands of life. We have the demands of responsibilities, and they crush us with what is perceived by the brain and the nervous system as predators to your life. So we can talk a bit more about it, but before I kind of shut up for a second to give Samantha a second to like weigh in it all, I do want to say this. I was 19 when I got that prognosis. I'm 52 today. I had 3 children. I exercised until the day they were born. They're 22, 20, and 17 now. I can run 5 miles on a good day. I travel the world. I have no limitations. I have never had a surgery nor an X-ray, nor an injection. And I have the exact same film. And although it made complete sense that every doctor looked at that finding and said, that's the reason for your pain, it never was. And that's one of the things I spend so much time with in this new book, which is coming out really soon that you guys can get your hands on, because it's so important for me for you guys to be inspired. And I'm sure this is everything you're always doing at CHIP, which is like there is so much more to learn about the way our bodies function. And when we're in pain, it is not necessary to only look at the place in our body that is expressing pain, because there is a brain and nervous system dance, like I said, that is the genesis of everything we feel. The signals of muscle constriction, spasm, neuropathy, and inflammation, etc., are being sent. They are real. They are being expressed through the body, but why? And when you start to get a little curious and replace your fear or your skepticism with curiosity and open up to what I teach and what I'm sure you guys are teaching all the time here, the possibilities for healing are astounding. I know Samantha mentioned that I have a podcast. So I've had this podcast since 2018. I've hundreds of episodes of people from all age groups, all walks of life, all ethnicities, all genders, all over the world who have all different symptom sets, all different diagnoses that have done this work to regulate their nervous systems, to understand this mind-body connection, and are free. They are free of symptoms no matter how real it felt and looked.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we have that experience in our team here where, kids are not having medical procedures or surgeries, and through all of the types of mind body treatments that you talk about, they go on to live happy, functional lives. And, to your point about your own experience with your back and with the imaging, I know there's also research that even backs up that just having an MRI of your back tends to make pain worse because, you think, "Oh, no, I have this horrible thing," and then that creates fear, and that creates anxiety,
Yes.
and then you're
Yes.
protecting, and then you're tensing, and then you're not using it. It
100%.
becomes a feedback loop. So, um, can you give some examples aside from the back, example that you've gone through of conditions that you've treated and, maybe give us another illustration of a case, where you've used some of these mind body techniques or thoughts to help someone?
Yes. So first of all, I don't even have the brain capacity to tell you how many different things I've treated. So I'm going to throw out a bunch just so people can qualify. But I
Sure.
mean, there is a symptom list that is pages long. Migraines, fibromyalgia, back, neck, shoulder, knee, hip, elbow pain that seemed like it was from a structural cause that ends up not, long COVID, chronic fatigue, skin conditions of all kinds, everything stomach, IBS, IBD, even when people have findings that show leaky gut or different bacteria, SIBO, etc. People who have been on elimination diets that now eat everything they want, pelvic disorders of all kind, pelvic pain, IC, which is interstitial cystitis, vulvodynia, all sorts of different issues in the pelvic area. Um, symptom sets that have been previously associated with chronic mold, chronic Lyme, and post-concussive disorder. I'm just like literally going, blah,
Yeah.
but
And
it
I
goes,
Sorry,
Go ahead.
sorry. Didn't mean I was gonna say, I assume that includes also because a lot of our clients have dysautonomia types of symptoms,
Yes.
like the dizziness and the POTS and
Vertigo, POTS, nausea, chronic cyclical vomiting, and what's really really amazing about human beings is that they love to share their stories and they're so generous with sharing their stories. What I do on the podcast is I share people's stories every day, but what I did in the book is I picked 14 stories. Like we really worked hard to find all the different symptoms and all the different ways people could relate. And the end of every chapter is somebody's story in their own words, because we want you to feel like you're part of this. There's nobody that is left out of the amazing miracle and beauty of the human body and how it seeks healing if you can just remove the barriers to healing, which oftentimes have to do, like you said, with fear and meaning that are inciting more muscle spasm and constriction and all the inflammation that's sent into our bodies when our nervous systems think we need protection.
right.
So there's that. And in terms of like talking about another case, um, my God, I have so many. But since we're talking to young people, why don't we talk about a girl who she's interviewed on my podcast. She, I believe, is from Finland. And you have to realize many people that I talk about that I've interacted with, I've never even known them personally. Because, like Samantha said at the top of this call, I have so much that I've created over the years to try to help people that people just go online. They find me somehow. Maybe they heard an interview or they, you know, put chronic pain in their podcast app and they found the podcast. And then they take the Freedom from Chronic Pain course that you mentioned, which is like just an online self directed course, and they do the work. And now they're totally better. And they reach out to me and they say, I want to come on the podcast and inspire others. So this girl is one of these people. She was a professional dancer. She was at university. She was studying academics and dancing and competing. I mean, her videos are insane. She's an incredible dancer. Her body, what it can do. I mean, I can't do any of that stuff. So I love watching people who can do like beautiful movement with their body. But anyway, her leg was hurting her and she thought she had pulled a muscle. And so she went to, and it was really, really bad. And it was really like kind of progressing down her leg. So she went to the doctor and they're like, no, it's a pulled muscle. It'll be fine. So it wasn't fine. And it was getting worse and it was getting worse. She was getting more and more anxious. And then her other leg started hurting. So of course she went back to the doctor and she's like, something's really wrong. Something's really worse. And they're like, we can't find anything wrong with you. They did whatever appropriate tests that were to be done. Then the pain started in her arms and in her hands and in her feet and all over her body. And she was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome, CPRS. And it got progressively worse and worse. And then the neuropathy started. So it wasn't just pain, it was tingling and like electric shock feeling all over her body. So this girl went from being this full-time student and full-time dancer to totally bedbound. She did not leave her bed without assistance for 10 months. Her muscles were atrophying. It's a really, really, it's a dark story. And she was feeling super, super low and really decided, I don't think that I can go on like this. She was like 20 and she was kind of thinking that she wasn't going to be able to go on. And so she was like on the internet 3 in the morning doing some sort of a deep dive, I don't know on what, and she found my work. And she downloaded the course and she was reading up and listening to my podcast. She started doing the work for herself, which we'll talk a little bit about. And she completely recovered. Her story is in the book. Her name is Sonia. But the reason it's so beautiful to tell her story is when she started to recover, one day she was looking out her window and it was a beautiful snowy day and she saw people walking around and she hadn't left her bed or her house in 10 months. And she said to herself, wait, nothing's wrong with me. I can take a walk. And she tells the story in the book of her taking a walk. A girl who used to be able to put her body, these crazy positions, flip around, like she
Right,
can do a back bend and flip, and she just took a walk. And like her appreciation of the fact that we as humans can take a walk. And the way she describes it has we've totally lost touch with these beautiful moments, these simple moments of being connected with our body and alive. It's
Mhm.
just stunning. So anyway, that was the first thing. And then she could walk to her kitchen and make a tea for her friend. And that was magical for her. Now she's dancing, she's competing, she's back to life. She is writing her thesis right now on this work. She's completely changed her educational path to do this for her life, to bring this message to others. This is and what's amazing about this story, and I say this with knowing how hilarious it is. The story is boring in my work. This story is
Mhm.
so commonplace because this is what happens when the nervous system gets regulated, when we no longer are in that confused state of chronic fight or flight. So that's Sonia. You can read about her. She's amazing.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Um, because we have parents listening here, I'm wondering if some of the parents might want some advice on what the first step they can take to help their child. In other words, like, how can they convince their child or their teen to embrace these ideas, or get their child to understand this? What do you suggest to parents?
Amazing. It's an amazing question. So, I've been thinking about this for a long time because, like I said, I have three kids, 22, 20, and 17, and they've been raised in this soil. Actually, one of the stories in this book is my 16-year-old daughter who wrote about an issue she was having with her feet when she was 11. And I'm not going to get into that one, but you can read it. But it's like amazing what happens when you can really turn your thinking around on something. But we my partner Lisa and I have been working together to bring this message to people all over the world for about 2.5 years. And about a year and a half ago, her daughter Kate, who was 16 at the time, needed an internship for school. And so we were like, Kate, and she had had chronic stomach stuff as a younger kid, like super, I'm sure with a lot of parents are going through, like every test, every treatment, is it celiac? Is it Crohn's? Is it, irritable bowel, which of course irritable bowel just is under the umbrella of my stuff because all it is an umbrella term for any stomach thing. But anyway, and so they did everything, they tried every treatment, nothing was working. And then one day, when she was about 14, 15 years old, she developed really crippling anxiety, like scared of everything. But oddly, her stomach aches went
Stomach
away.
pain went away. Yep.
Pain went away. And this is before I had met her and Lisa and I hadn't started this effort of bringing this work out in the world. And so they didn't know why. And she was just kind of like, huh. So anyway, we're talking with Kate and we're like, how about you be our teen ambassador? How about you help us carry this message, but you're going to need to do the work for yourself. So Kate starts doing this work, this journal speak practice that I teach and everything. And she starts like, and she's like, you guys, I, I am not nearly as anxious as I used to be. I'm not getting any of those physical symptoms of anxiety. Like, this is crazy. And we're like, this is how it works. So she started a really robust journal speak practice. She started using all the mindset tools. She brought her friends in. We had this big, amazing meeting with a huge group of her friends. They all started doing the work. They're reporting back and sending us videos of how everything is so great. So we brought her last summer to the Omega Institute, which is in upstate New York. I don't know if any of you people, your community is East Coast, but it's kind of like Esalen, but for the East Coast.
Uh-huh.
And I teach there every summer. I'm on faculty there. And Kate came with us and gave a talk to the entire retreat that like brought down the house, like standing ovation, because to hear it from a child who has lived this work. So what we did is we filmed it. And then there were a bunch of young kind of Gen Z set that had come to Omega because they had heard about Kate's work because I interviewed her a couple times on the podcast. And then we did a roundtable, kind of like a circle discussion with all these kids about what they're doing for themselves. And we filmed it all and it's on my website. So when you go to NicoleSachs.com, if you click on the Heal Yourself tab under
Mm.
education, is I think it's called Gen Z, like something Gen Z, journal speaking with Gen Z, and
Okay.
it's you can get it there. It is the best way to get your kid into this because you could tell a teenager to read this book, not really sure. You could tell a teenager what you think is up with them, not really sure. I have 3 kids. I completely get it. They roll their eyes at me, and I'm like, hello, this is like my entire career. So
Right.
but hearing it from another kid and then hearing all these young people like talking about how this has changed their life, to me is we like went back and forth on what's the best way to create content for kids, and we decided they have to hear it in their own voice. My joke with Kate when we first brought her on was, I don't know how to speak teen as well as I once did, and so we need you as a translator. So anyway, that
Right.
would be a great first step, just to
Great.
give kids these videos, and then if they'll take the course, because the course just, it's so simple. It lays it out, 14 lessons, and it also has art therapy exercises, and it's very focused on doing this without any complication.
Absolutely. And I've taken half the course so far, so I can say it's really well laid out. It's really clear. It's really simple. And the each lesson is really delineated really nicely. Um, one of our parents, oh, someone's asking again where the Gen Z link is. So you go to your website,
If you go,
go to
yeah, I
field,
can
hit
actually,
down.
I can put the direct link in or send it to you guys, and then you can include it. I don't know if that's easier, but you just go to NicoleSachs.com, which I know is listed here. It's also
Mhm.
Your Break Awake, which is my brand, but Nicole Sachs will get you there. And then click on Heal Yourself, and under Heal Yourself, all the education will come up. So you'll see the Freedom from Chronic Pain course. There's also a specific course for anxiety, and the Gen Z content is under there as well.
Got it. Okay. One of our parents wants to know if you can speak a little bit about long COVID.
Yes. Oh my God, long COVID. So when COVID first hit, about a month or two in, I already knew. I was like, there's going to be so much chronic suffering from this, because there is nothing like a global event sticking us all in fight or flight at the same time. And the terror of not only getting it, and what might physically happen to you, the stigma, especially at the beginning. I mean, it was like you had leprosy. It was like you were untouchable. And so I knew long COVID was going to be I'm sorry, I knew COVID was going to cause something. And then people started reporting on this long COVID, and then the symptom sets of long COVID, which are all these things I had already been treating for 20 years. The migraines, the brain fog, the chronic fatigue, the unexplained chest pain. Like, I had already seen this so much in my clinical practice, because the first 18 years I was in private practice. So I was doing this just hour to hour with people. And then I closed my practice to be able to focus on writing and teaching and all the creating content. But still, like, I knew all of these things were coming from the same place. So, a woman contacted me. Her story is also in the book. Her name is Lika, and she was in the Netherlands. She was very young, early 30s, and she was completely debilitated for 8 months with long COVID. So bad that she could not walk from her bedroom to her kitchen without like having to stand and recover. She couldn't wear a bra because of the chest pains for months. She didn't have the energy to take a shower for months. She had to sponge bath in her bed. She was alone. No one could visit her. She couldn't have her family over, her mom. Like, the thought of it, she was in the Netherlands at the time. I mean, that's where she's from. Anyway, she found my podcast through, like I said, it's a long story. And she did the work, and she was completely better. She was completely symptom free. And she got in touch with me, and she said, long COVID is completely curable. And I'm like, I know. And she said, let me come on the podcast. So then we did a podcast together. She wrote her story for the book. Long COVID is just like a headache. Long COVID is just like back pain. Long COVID is just like irritable bowel. There is no difference. It's coming from the same place. It's treatable with the same mind, body, nervous system regulation stuff, and it's treatable completely. I actually put 2 long COVID stories in the book. One from Lika, who's a young woman, and one from Gary, who's a man in his 60s from New Zealand, because I want people to understand this is every, you know, a stage of life, every type of person. Gary was also completely and utterly debilitated, and his symptoms were very severe, even more severe, like scary severe. He had like aphasia, and a lot of things were going on. So all I want to say for anyone with long COVID, adult or child, please do not get mired in the fear. read this stuff, understand the possibilities, because it's all coming from the same place. The brain and the nervous system, when you are in sustained fight or flight for too long, the human animal is not built for long-term fight or flight. We're built for short bursts, just like every animal, by the way. But the human animal is the only animal that's capable of keeping ourselves in fight or flight. An animal knows when it's in danger. It also knows when it's out of danger. When the lion walks onto the savannah, the herd gets all, up in a tizzy, right? And everyone's communicating with each other. Are we going to flee? What's going to happen? But as soon as the lion, who potentially just fed, continues walking and leaves the savannah, everybody kind of shakes it off and continues drinking at the watering hole. Animals
Right.
do not hold on to fight or flight, but humans do, because we have the capacity for fear and meaning and projection and attaching ourselves to pre-grieving and catastrophizing and all the things we can do. And we have childhood trauma. We have things that we are still, that is repressed, that has not been dealt with, and all of this is a trigger, and it keeps us up here. We're not meant to be up here. As soon as you realize that, and that's what long COVID is, 100%, the symptoms will stop firing. And I'm going to say one more thing, because I think it's a really good way to illustrate this. If you have a building, oh God, this is a really actually prescient thing to say this week. If you have a building that is on fire, and the building has a fire alarm, when the fire is raging within the building, the fire alarm will go off. The fire alarm is not the problem, but the fire alarm is an indication that there is a problem, because we need help. So the fire company gets there and they get their hoses out. But in the case that I'm talking about, they start dousing the fire alarm. The fire alarm is screaming and they think the fire alarm is the problem. They're dousing the fire alarm, and as we all know, you could douse the fire alarm from here till forever, and you will never stop the fire alarm from screaming, because all the fire alarm is trying to tell you is there's a fire. If they turn their hoses and extinguish the fire alarm will naturally go off. So when you are in this chronic fight or flight state, and you're getting migraines and fibro and long COVID and stomach stuff and pain all over your body, the pain is the fire alarm. It's here to say there's a problem and it needs to be addressed. But the pain is not the problem, it's the indication that there is a problem. The fire is these repressed emotions, this stored trauma, this stuff that needs to be dealt with, that's kicking us into this long-term fight or flight. And once we turn our attention to the right place and deal with this, with the problem, the pain signals stop firing. And that's what is just absolutely astounding about this work. My partner, Lisa, who I mentioned, had chronic migraines. When I met her, she was taking injectable medication. And this is a woman who is not interested in putting any medication in her body that she does not need. She did this work that I helped her understand. And now it's been 2 years and she hasn't gotten a migraine and she hasn't taken any medication. And she keeps saying, I can't believe it. And I go, right, well, because there's no reason for the alarm when there's no fire.
Right. Right. And it speaks to mindfulness also in terms of like the animals with the lion, because the animals aren't thinking about, what happened an hour ago or what might happen in the future. They're just like, right now the lion's not there, so we're good.
We're good.
We're thinking about all of that. There are a lot of questions about your course and what age you think it's for, what's the youngest age you think it's for, and whether you think that healthcare providers should do it in order to help their clients, and also someone's asking if there's anyone who helps guide the children or the patients through it, or it's just self-guided. So maybe kind of give a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, okay, so first of all, I'm going to answer the clinician thing first. We have a practitioner training that's much more appropriate for therapists, doctors, even alternative practitioners, school counselors, nurses. That's called the Sarno Sachs solution. Actually, Dr. Sarno's daughter, Christina, who's also a therapist in New York City, is our partner, our business partner. We wrote this course for 2 years together. It is excellent. I will just tell you, for practitioners, it also offers 18 3/4 CEs for those of us who need to be licensed. So if there's any reference for practitioners, the Sarno Sachs solution. It's also under Heal Yourself, but it's also at sarnosachs.com, a direct link for practitioners. And you can get the first module for free just by putting your email in. So if people want to sample it. By the way, the same thing for the course. For either of the courses, you can get your first lesson for free when you go on the course page. Just letting you guys know if you want to sample it. But I think this work that I teach is appropriate for any child that is ready and able to look at themselves. You know how you bring some kids to therapy and some kids thrive in therapy and some kids sit there the whole time with their arms crossed and they're like, I don't want to talk to you. If you're at the I don't want to talk to you phase, that's not, the child is not ready. But true readiness is everything. I have I guess I would call her a friend at this point. She's a woman who's been doing my work for years. She comes to my Omega retreat. I know her well at this point. She wrote me this morning. Her 13-year-old daughter is totally thriving and symptom free after doing the course and continuing with the work, but she's a mature 13-year-old. So I'm not
Right.
going to give it an exact age range, but if you feel like your kid is ready and wanting to be better and wanting to, do this work and be open, then that's the age.
Yeah, I mean, someone's asking about a 10-year-old. I think it really depends, and I've done half the course, like I said. I think that's a little young. But I think that a parent could
Here's what
maybe.
I'll say. Here's what I'll say
Yeah,
about a 10-year-old, because I did this work with my daughter. Like I said, her story's in the book from when she was 11. So
yeah,
I'll tell the story really quick, just in brief. She's a dancer and she has a condition in her feet called accessory navicular bone, which is a normal abnormality. It's 14% of the population have it. It kind of looks like you have an ankle bone underneath your ankle. It kind of protrudes. But because until you're 11 years old, that's considered cartilage and it grows into bone, you can't really see it if you have this condition until you're around 11 years old. So she had started being on point for ballet when she was 10, which was a year earlier than recommended, but I let her do it because she was ready and her dance studio said she was ready. So when her bone started showing at 11, we all freaked out because it really looked creepy and it was irritated and it was red and it became really swollen, and we took her, just like any parent, by the way, I do not dismiss the medical model. I go to the doctor, I get my kids checked out, I use antibiotics. Like I'm not like, just letting you know. So we went to the orthopedist, and the orthopedist was incredibly, very inflammatory in his response. And he was like, this is the worst case I've ever seen. She's definitely gonna need surgery. So she's hysterical. And of course, then the symptoms get terrible and worse, and it looks like a golf ball on the side of her foot. So I started researching surgery because I am, once again, a responsible parent. I need to figure out what's what. And I start reading about the surgery, and over, people are saying the surgery doesn't take away pain, the surgery doesn't help. There was one girl who was 17 who wrote a post that as a dancer that she had the surgery. Not only was her pain not gone, but now she had neuropathy at the incision site. And I was like, okay, forget it. I went into her room and I was like, you know what I do for a living, right? And she's like, kind of. And I was like, I'm going to explain it to you. I also write about this in the book, so you guys can read that there too, because it's in her words. I don't think this is impossible for a 10-year-old, but it would be the parent and a 10-year-old. So, what I would
exactly.
suggest is you take the course and then you sit with your daughter or son and say, okay, this is what, like you can help translate it. The book will help you tremendously too. And also it'll be on Audible. It'll be out in like a week and a half. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to take in the information and you can listen with your child. But definitely until about 13, 14, I would say it's a dual effort. And when someone said, is there someone to walk the kid through it? It's really, really simple. Like, this is work that I call simple but not easy. It's not easy because it takes effort. And although it's amazing that the power is in our hands to heal ourselves, it's also a bummer that the power is in our hands to heal ourselves, because I, like everybody else, wishes there was a pill. I want the pill. Like I want there to be, someone give me an injection and I'm well. That is
Mhm.
not the way the human body works. And by the way, that is never going to be the way the human body works. We are here to feel big and to experience things big. And that also translates into our physical experience of being alive. But it's not bad news. It just is, it's work, but it's work that was coming for all of us. I use the word chronic pain to talk about my work. The truth is, this work is for every human being in the world. There's no cure for the human condition. It is hard. It's hard to be alive. It's hard to be a mom, dad. It's hard, but it's great, And if we can look at it that way and just like embody it, there's so much hope.
And it's amazing the way the body can heal itself under the right conditions,
Amazing.
right? So, yeah.
Astounding. Yeah.
I think, I was gonna say the same thing about a parent with a younger child, and I would add that I think the parent can look at the lessons themselves and sort of tailor it for their child's age a little bit and for what they know about their child, like explain it in the way that they know their child can understand it, and even some of the writing prompts or the art therapy to do it in the way that they think their child can understand it. um, there are so many questions about the Omega Institute and like technical things. So is there somewhere you can point people to find out a little bit more about that?
Yes. So you have to realize my website, well, how would you realize until I tell you? We rebuilt the entire thing last year because I knew my book was coming out and I knew we were going to get attention that we hadn't gotten.
Right.
It is a treasure trove of information. If you go to
Okay.
my website and click on the retreats tab, you can read all about Omega. If you click on the Heal Yourself tab, you can purchase the Omega Talks. You can actually purchase some of our talks. Of course, Kate's talk is under the Gen Z tab, but like my teachings, my some of my instructors' teachings. We have a great teaching on brain science. Gigi Cockell, she's a neuroscientist. She's out of the UK. She went to Oxford. She's amazing at explaining this. So there's just so much information. You should just go like hang out there, and understand because there's just so much to learn. But yeah, Omega is amazing. It is to me, honestly, since COVID, the thought of what happens when people are in the same room together has even become more important, in my opinion. The energy of time spent. It is a 5-day retreat. It's always the last week in June. This year, it's the 22nd to the 27th. It is a life-changing situation. It truly is. It is like you don't leave the same person you came. We have teenagers that come with their parents. We have groups of friends that are doing this together that come. It's
Great.
really amazing. Yeah.
That's
And it's
great.
and it's like summer camp. Like it's like you stay in
Right.
cabins. It's like amazing. Yeah. So you'll
Sounds amazing. Um, Dr. Zeltzer is asking how much time the course takes. And like we said, there's 14 lessons that each take anywhere from a half hour to an hour. So
I
you
would
could do
say,
that.
yeah, I mean, maybe some of them would maybe be like an hour and a half. I mean, when I first created the course, I was like, okay, it's 14 lessons and it can be reasonably completed in like 30 days. And the only reason I said that is because like maybe you don't want to do it like every single day, but
Right.
it's 14 lessons and it's like you do it at your own pace. And then a lot of the lessons just teach you a tool that you can do whenever you want.
Mhm.
So I think it's pretty chill.
Yeah. So you were talking about, you mentioned, I think your partner's daughter who had the somatic symptoms, and then when those went away, she had really bad anxiety and then worked your program for that. And that's something that I notice all the time with my clients where we work on, you know, making the pain go away. But the pain does go away, and then the mental health issues really come to the surface, or we work on the mental health issues and then have to kind of deal with the chronic pain. So, but I do find a lot, and when I run the parent groups, we talk a lot about how after we help the kids go back to functioning and their pain recedes or their other somatic symptoms recede, a lot of those mental health issues come to the forefront. And one of the parents is asking if you can talk a little bit more about kind of how you address that anxiety when the pain goes away.
So the first thing I want to say is I want to put like the most big, delicious, cozy blanket over all of these fears and questions. It is normal to feel human anxiety. It is normal for pain and anxiety because they're exactly the same thing. They look a lot different, just like back pain and headaches look different. They all come from the same space. So when I say I want to put a big blanket over it, I want you to stop being scared. And I know that that's hard, and I know you can't always choose to stop being scared. But as you start learning about this, you start realizing it's okay. It's normal. Sometimes we feel things in our heart, and sometimes we feel things in our body, and they're literally interchangeable. So if the depression comes and goes, and then the back pain, and then the anxiety, and then the OCD, and then if we can normalize it, and instead of making it a problem, I mean, when I wrote my anxiety course, which is specifically for like a lot of cognitive behavioral tools, you'll see it's called Freedom from an Anxious Life. The premise of the whole thing is anxiety is not a disorder. Anxiety is our human way of figuring out what's a danger to us, what do we need to be worried about, and what isn't. So we need our fear, we need our anxiety, but we don't need chronic anxiety. So what happens is when we have a notion that something is a problem, we have to learn how to discern what's actually a problem that needs an actionable response and what is perseveration and rumination and pre-grieving and all these things I teach. And that's how we figured out. But the most important thing is this is totally normal. My son is just built anxious. He is very, very, very high functioning autistic. So ASD1, you would barely even know it by talking to him, but he is. And he's so sensitive and he's so anxious. And he will get a back problem or a stomach ache, and I'll say, and we'll do this work, and I'll talk. He's 20 years old. He's at NYU. He's doing great. But he will then get so anxious and he'll call me and he'll be like, I'm so anxious. I'm so anxious. And I'll go, baby, okay. So welcome it in. Tell it to have a seat on the kindergarten carpet. Like, welcome to me. It's who you are. Like, we don't need to make this a problem. It's just you're having an experience right now. Invite it in. One thing I have to say, Elizabeth Gilbert, who I'm a big fan of,
Mhm.
has this awesome talk where she says how to talk to fear. Have you heard it,
Yes.
Samantha?
Yes.
I love it. So I'm going to quote her. And
Great.
here's what she says. When you are afraid, fear is talking to you, and you have to learn how to talk to fear. And if you say, get out of here, you're not welcome, fear will scream even louder. It'll scream in your face. So, this is the way you talk to fear. You say, we're going on a trip, and I know that you're here with me. So, get in the back, strap it into its 5-point harness. You are going to come. And you can scream the whole time because that's your job, your fear, but you are not going to drive the car. You are not going to pick the snacks and you're not going to map the route. You are not in charge, but I'm not forsaking you because you're here to be heard. And one thing my work does is it gives you a vehicle to have a conversation and an interaction with fear and with anger and with regret and with shame and say, nobody's judging you. I just want to hear what you have to say so you don't have to scream through my head and through my stomach and through my back. We're letting you in, but you're not mapping the route and you're not driving the car and you're not picking the snacks. And that's the way we normalize this. There's nothing wrong. There's just something amiss. And we're going to be able to make that right.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is very much embraced by ACT, the acceptance and commitment
Mhm.
therapy. And, mindfulness just it's there. You don't have to try to push it down and you don't have to feed into it. You just kind of let it be. So that's great. Someone is asking if you can talk about chronic pain issues in young adults with ADHD. You just
Yep.
talked about
Yep.
anxiety with ADHD.
Yep. Oliver, in addition to being ASD1, is also probably, I mean, he's not diagnosed, but I see the qualities in him. I know so many people that are ADHD. Neurodiversity is just like really coming to the fore and finally getting the attention it deserves for the challenges that it puts on our lives. There's really nothing to say other than know thy child and know thyself. So I believe in diagnosis because diagnosis is so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if you see that you're dealing with an ADHD child, then you just look at the symptom set and you say, okay, well, I noticed that my kid is really distractible, or I noticed that my kid has a short attention span. So I'm not going to overload them. I'm going to basically meet them where they're at. The social work mantra is start where the client is at. So I say start where the child is at. So you know your kid, you know what they can handle. Give them things in bite-sized pieces that they can handle. Speak to them in a language they understand. But other than that, it's no different.
Yeah, because when the system is stressed, by executive functioning demands that they cannot meet, that's when the somatic symptoms are going to happen because their whole their whole being is stressed at these demands.
And another thing I like to do with any person who's suffering with anything is just normalize it. So like my partner's other daughter suffers from a lot of ADHD, and so when I try to help her, I just say, "I totally see right now exactly what's happening." And then I try to frame it in what's happening. I see what's happening. So I'm talking to you and it's making you feel like you can't hold all these thoughts right now, so you're zoning out. Like I'm watching you zone out and I want you to know that's totally cool. Like just normalizing everything always is really helpful.
Mhm. I think one of the important things that comes up a lot, and there's a couple questions about this, is a lot of our clients, and so the parents that are on, have experience with their kids where, they've gone to 20, 30 doctors, nothing's helped, and the kids feel hopeless and demoralized, and they don't really trust any treatments anymore. They're just like, I don't want to do anything more. Nothing works. I get false hope. And then that's, dashed. And I just don't want to try anymore. What do you say to those parents about how they can get their kids to engage? That's number one. And number two, someone's asking if the course doesn't help them, what would be the next step?
Well, I think that okay, so let's look at it this way. Um I forget Samantha, just tell me, do you is this all local to LA or are there people in different parts of the country?
No, there's people all over
Okay.
and in different parts of the world even.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Same with my platform, but I wasn't 100% sure. I want to say this just because in the past few days, we've been preparing because on the first week of February, I'm going to be in New York City for this book launch, and we're going to be in conversation on Wednesday evening at the 92nd Street Y. And the
Mhm.
reason I'm saying that is because if people are in the New York metro area, grab your ticket today and come because this is the we're having these conversations that are going to answer also a lot of these questions. Christina Sarno and I are going to be in conversation. Lisa is going to moderate it and we're going to have questions from the audience. So anyway, I wanted to mention that because as you were asking, it goes into a lot of what we're preparing for this talk, the answer to your question in terms of I've done everything, nothing has worked. Why should this work? And how can I have the right attitude toward that? And by the
Mhm.
way, you can also find the link to the 92nd Street Y if you click on the book tab on the website under book tour. Because we'll be at the 92nd Street Y Wednesday, February 5th, and then at Diesel Bookstore actually in
Oh,
Brentwood on
nice.
February 13th, the following week. So
Okay,
come out and
great.
hang out with us and be part of this. But okay, the best way to look at this, and this is not going to be totally new for anyone who's engaging with CHIP because this is literally what you do, but it's a total paradigm shift. Like you might have gone to 30 doctors, none of that applies here because the 30 doctors that you went to were dealing with the part of the body that is expressing the symptom, and we are dealing with the core. The 30 doctors that you went to, no shade. I'm not dissing on any doctors, but they were dealing with the fire alarm. They were
Right.
helping you understand to understand where the problem is being expressed. And that's fine because we need to have our symptoms treated in order to be calm and centered enough to do the mind body work, right? I mean, if you're having a blinding migraine and you're vomiting or you need to be in a dark room, clearly you're not in the best space to do mind body work. So you need your migraine medication. Like, I'm not against any of this. What I am is saying if we don't deal with the genesis of the problem can never go away. Not the problem will never go away. The brain and the nervous system are on your side. They're not against you. Your body's not against you, even though it feels like it is. It's working perfectly when you're having chronic symptoms because it's trying to protect you. It just doesn't understand you don't need protection. So, when I say to kids who are bereft or adults, the good news is this is a total paradigm shift. We're drawing from a different account. We're doing something totally different. And it should be so exciting because it is a new way of looking at it. And the other thing I say is there are three facets of my work: believe, do the work, and patience and kindness for yourself. And under the umbrella of belief, I would take this child of yours that is like, why even bother? And go over to my podcast, The Cure for Chronic Pain, hundreds of episodes, all for free. Pick out symptoms. And when you're driving in the car with them, play an episode. Let them hear it from someone else's voice. Because
Mhm.
belief is a salve to the nervous system. It just allows it to calm down. It allows you to realize there is hope for me. You can release all the outcome attachment. Like, this is not like, okay, got it. Now I want to be better from this. This is like, at one point, the earth was flat. And everyone knew the earth was flat because they could ride their horse from here to there and it was flat. And they went to the ocean and they looked out and the horizon was flat. There was no doubt the earth was flat. And that was all there was. It is very hard to see and believe something until you can see it and believe it. And the only reason we ever understood that the earth was round is because people went and explored it and they came back in their own words and they said, I have seen this. Let me show you. And then people believed them eventually. And then we were able to do the research and the science to prove it. I am promising you from my heart to yours, as a mother, as a sufferer, as a practitioner, the earth is round. There are solutions that are whole body solutions that will deliver you into freedom like you have never known. It is a celebration, but it's hard work, and you have to believe first because believing is the doorway into everything.
If so, for these teens and kids who feel like nothing's ever worked, you really want to help them understand the difference between the doctors they've been seeing and what this work is. And
Yes.
I like the idea of playing a podcast when they're in the car because they're already prisoners
Yeah.
when they're in the car. And I also like the idea of them listening to maybe a young person on a podcast on one of your episodes talking about their experience because they can relate to that better. And it's not mom or dad telling them.
There are a couple. There are one girl was a prodigy violinist, so she was sent to, I think, like conservatory when she was like 5 or 6. She had to live away from her family because she was that insanely talented. And
Yeah.
she got such severe back pain. And when she was 15, 16 years old, she had to quit violin. Of course, got to go to regular university, got her degree, I think, in English literature. But in the meantime, was in so much chronic pain prior to university. You know, when she was still in conservatory, she found my work. She did my work as a teenager, symptom free, and realized I don't want to play the violin. And it doesn't mean she can't play the violin one day, but you
Yeah.
know, there are things that happen. So anyway, that's a great episode. I have a bunch, so I can get those to you.
Yeah, I notice a lot with my clients that the pain serves the function of not intentionally. I mean, they're not consciously doing this, but it serves the function of getting them out of things that they feel a lot of pressure to do, or they feel a lot of that their parents are kind of living through them, like they're a great
Mhm.
athlete or they're a great dancer or they're a great musician, and it's really their parents who are driving this, not them. Because what does a 5-year-old really know about what they want to do? I mean, they enjoy something, but then when they get pushed into such, high achieving, it becomes about achieving, not about enjoyment. And we kind of suck the fun out
Mhm.
of these activities for these kids. And a lot of them will tell me, I don't want to go back to soccer. I don't want to go back to gymnastics, but I don't know how to tell my parents.
Yeah.
So, and then the pain sort of serves that function. And once we can get them to be able to communicate this with their parents, suddenly they're not in as much pain anymore
And,
because they can do what they want to do.
and I want to send a message to parents because I get it. Like I said, I am a mother. And you want them to do gymnastics if they're good at gymnastics because you know it's good for team building and it's good for their body and it's good for their
Sure.
self-confidence. So what ends up happening, and I want you to be inspired by this, which I've seen in lots of kids, is they think they don't want to go to gymnastics. But what they really don't want is this unnamed, understood pressure that comes from a lot of misconceptions of what they have to be. And so they do this work and then they want to go to gymnastics. Like, this isn't just about, oh, I have to come to peace with the fact that my kid doesn't want to do anything. It's there are reasons underneath want. and we get to them, and then the pain goes away and the kid can go thrive.
Exactly. Um, we're getting we have one more question, but we're really getting close to the end. So let me just see, when you're working with teens, is a personality type that you're helping, for example, high achieving child? Well, we know that there are many common personality characteristics with people who
Yes.
develop chronic pain. Do you want to address this just kind of quickly?
Sure, 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 sure. Yeah. I mean, when I teach people to do this work, one of the first exercises is we take an inventory and we make three lists. One is under the umbrella childhood, daily life, and personality. The childhood, even for a child, there's still childhood. There's stuff like events and things that you list out that could be causing some upset. Daily life, whatever's stressful on your plate, and then personality. And under the personality list, it's always things like perfectionistic, codependent, like you need other people to be okay to feel okay, overly concerned about what other people think, people pleasing. People pleasing is such a huge thing. If you feel like you have to be what other people need you to be all the time, it requires a lot of emotional repression. Um, your own inner critic, like you said, high achieving kids. It is such a gift to get this young. I will tell you, every person listening to this call, I know you don't feel lucky. You are suffering because your kids are suffering, but I'm telling you, if you can embrace what we are talking about here, and I'm sure a lot of the CHIP offerings, your child is so well readied for life. I cannot tell you the gratitude, on my knees gratitude, that this happened to me at 19. I have people come to me at 60, 70 years old who have decades of chronic pain and are finally understanding this. Like these are the keys to the kingdom as far as I'm concerned. When you understand you're in a mind body system, when you understand you have the power, so much power than we realize, to affect our physical and emotional health, it is a toolkit for life. So I want you to just a little bit celebrate this because it's not bad news.
Ah, wonderful way to end. Thank you so much, Nicole. I'm sure this was really helpful and inspiring to the parents listening, so we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And to the parents who are on today and the practitioners, thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions about CHIP, you can email them at admin@mychip.org. And please, again, consider donating $25 or any amount to CHIP that will help us contribute to helping us continue this webinar series. So thank you so much. And we really appreciate your time, Nicole. I know you're really busy.
I love being here and I love sharing this message with young people.
Great. Thank you so much. Take care.